The apparel industry remains a dirty industry. Labor rights violations remain widespread, sub-poverty wages, abusive treatment of workers by supervisors, long hours of forced overtime, dangerous conditions in factories. And despite a great deal of consumer concern about the issue, despite a lot of promises from the apparel industry in response to those concerns that they're going to improve conditions, will take responsibility for protecting the rights of workers in their global supply chains, the reality is we've seen very little genuine progress. The one major exception is the university sphere. The WRC was created because universities have licensing agreements with major apparel brands like Nike and Adidas. Under these agreements, the universities get to make sweatshirts, t-shirts, and other clothes with the university names. And when they sell those clothes, the universities get a royalty.
In the late 90s, there was a largely student-led movement to get universities to adopt codes of conduct with the companies that they license their trademark with.
The WRC is an organization of universities. We have 186 colleges and universities that are affiliates of our organization.
We look very carefully at how we interact with companies that do business in this country and outside of this country.
It's a social justice issue that we're ensuring that the people that are making the goods are treated right.
Well, we think the integrity of our school is at stake and the apparel that we sell with our name on it, so we think it's incredibly important that those workers who are involved in this campus community, even if they're not here making our clothes that we buy, have their basic rights respected, have a living wage, have the right to form a union and that ability to organize.
The WRC carries out investigations of working conditions in factories all over the world, often in response to complaints from workers or worker rights organizations. We document violations of worker rights where they exist, and then we work with the universities to ensure that the brands and their supplier factories correct those violations, come into compliance with the standards, and genuinely respect the rights of workers.
For us, we really depend on the WRC and the reporting and the work that's done on the ground.
It's an independent monitoring group, so it's independent from any industry influence, and so students really have trust that what the work that the WRC does is legitimate, is responding to worker complaints, is true to what is actually happening on the factory floor.
Compañeras que hoy lo vieron en la inauguración formal que hubo de la empresa, decirles, compañeras y compañeros, que nos sentimos muy orgullosos.
Something extraordinary is happening here in Choloma, Honduras. These maquiladora workers, employees of the apparel giant Russell Corporation, are celebrating a historic breakthrough for worker rights. They are going back to work.
Me sentí alegre, emocionada, no tenía palabras. Recuperar el trabajo no fue tan fácil.
When these workers organized a union to press for better wages and conditions, Russell shut down the factory. The firing of the plant's 1,200 workers was a huge blow to efforts to improve conditions in Central America's maquiladoras.
The WRC had long been in contact with worker rights advocates and union leaders in Honduras who were involved in an effort to organize a union at one of Russell's wholly owned manufacturing facilities in that country.
Los trabajadores de Jersey de Honduras y de Jersey Choloma llegaron a nuestras oficinas planteando muchas quejas.
Empezaron a cambiar los métodos de trabajo, a aumentar las metas de producción, a bajarnos los bonos de producción, empezaron a hostigarnos. Y empezamos a decirle a la gente que teníamos que organizarnos.
And it was clear based on a great deal of evidence that our organization gathered, that the decision of workers to exercise this fundamental, globally recognized right is the reason why their jobs were taken away and the factory was closed.
Last month, Russell closed a factory in Honduras in retribution for some of its employees joining a union. That is the allegation. Factory supervisors were also accused of harassing union supporters, intimidating them, and denying access to the plant for inspection. Enter to this story the University of Michigan, which is now the latest university to terminate their contract with Russell.
Well, Russell was a licensee, and through a complaint system and a report written by the WRC, we were made aware of Russell's behavior.
So we had to think pretty hard about it, but I think as I had conversations with Russell, which I did, and got the information from the Workers' Rights Consortium, we made a determination very clearly that we were going to terminate that contract.
The workers were being fired, the factory was being closed because of their organizing efforts, because of their attempts to assert their rights that Russell didn't like. So, in the months after that, we were really trying to mobilize students. Directly, we were trying to get our university to refuse to do business.
In this case, there were a lot of universities that ended their contract. And I think because there was such a critical number ending the contracts, that there was an overall impact.
As a result, in substantial part of the efforts of universities to enforce their codes of conduct, Russell recognized they had to resolve the issues. And they came to the table and sat down with representatives of the union and negotiated a resolution that is quite extraordinary in its scope and content. Russell agreed to reopen the factory it had closed to get rid of the union, to rehire all 1,200 plus workers who have been employed there, to recognize and bargain in good faith in an environment of mutual respect with the union, and arguably most important of all, to agree to respect the rights of workers throughout all of their factories in Honduras, where Russell and its parent Fruit of the Loom are the largest private employer, to respect the right of all of their workers to unionize, which is a first in the global apparel industry in our experience.
La verdad que me entraron ganas de llorar cuando supe que la empresa se abría. Fue algo muy maravilloso.
Mi nombre es Mirna Lisset Chavarría López y estoy muy feliz, muy alegre de estar nuevamente en Jersey Nuevo Día. Ahora podemos llevarle un ingreso a nuestras familias.
Y gracias a las universidades de Estados Unidos por ayudarlos y gracias a los estudiantes también.
Gracias a las universidades, a todas las que estuvieron apoyándonos, a esos jóvenes que sí nos apoyaron bastante y gracias, sencillamente gracias.